Hey guys, welcome back to Telltale. I'm Emily,
I'm Greg.
and today we are having another topic discussion. And this is one that Greg kind of approached me with because I had not caught wind of this until just now because I am now self employed. So I've been running around like a headless chicken trying to get all kinds of things done. So Greg has been kind enough to keep me in the know about what's going on in the book world, and you dug up this really interesting one that we both had quite a reaction to when we were having dinner earlier.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't write down details. I saw a video just this afternoon.
Mhm.
I forget the booktuber. I forget the channel. He was an author, really good channel. I'll have to put it in the notes for the video
It is
because
a good
he's
channel.
worth looking up. He's a good guy. Got a good channel. Sounds like a good author. I'll have to try some of his books. But he did a video today talking about an article that's been released, and I know there's been a couple other videos on this subject. I forget the magazine it was published in, but the magazine article had a headline of Men Don't Read. And I guess specifically, I haven't read the article, I haven't seen the article, but based on this video I saw this afternoon, specifically, this article was saying that the only men who do read are gay.
Yeah, queer identifying men.
Okay.
All right. Well, there's always a danger with blanket statements.
Yes.
First impression is fucking clickbait, man.
Yeah.
It's bullshit.
I think it really, like I say, I didn't read the article, so I think if you read into the article, you would find out that they don't
Mhm.
really believe that because, I mean, only a moron would say that.
Yeah, making blanket statements and absolute statements is a very tricky business.
Hmm.
But people will do anything to sensationalize and get people to click on stuff.
Hmm.
So right off the bat, my red flag goes up for a sensationalized title and
Hmm.
clickbaity title.
Hmm.
But the implication that straight men are not reading, what? Are you kidding me? There's so many great booktubers and book talkers who are straight men.
Yeah, so the video I saw this afternoon listed a whole bunch of booktube channels by men who are not gay that read lots of books, mainly, things like grimdark fantasy and stuff. But, come on, they're reading books.
Mhm.
And I've been reading books my whole life. I'm straight. I mean, that statement is just so stupid
It
in so
is.
many ways and so offensive in so many
It
ways
is.
that the author should never work again.
And even as a queer female, I love that there's stuff that's trending right now that speaks to my lifestyle. I
Hmm.
love that that stuff is available to me.
Hmm.
But I also recognize that this is the ebb and flow of capitalism. This trend is not forever. We do have the unfortunate situation where there is a lot of straight people out there, or straight white men especially, who are feeling discriminated against. I see it.
Hmm.
I have empathy for it. I
Hmm.
don't necessarily think it's not all of them are good at providing the rationale. A lot of them are just very high emotion. But I
Yeah.
do see that the trend is leaning towards things that are written by women or written by queer identifying people or trans people or things like that because they haven't been part of literature for so long. I
Hmm.
see the trend swinging that way.
Hmm.
We will watch the trend swing the other way,
Hmm.
based off of what is capitalistic.
Hmm.
So to make these outlandish statements that it's only the women and the queer people who are who are reading right now because that's what's trending. No shit. What are we writing for the straight guys too? If you want to believe in true diversity, you have to believe in being able to be all encompassing, all inclusivity, including for the straight white men.
Hmm.
So, as a queer identifying woman, I find it very ridiculous to make that blanket statement. But it does bring up the issue that we do have these companies that are basing around this trend and what
Yes.
that speaks to as well.
Yes, we do have a situation in publishing right now where we do have one company in particular that is probably responsible for most of the publishing going on, Random House.
Random House, yeah.
And and all the different companies they own. I mean, they own Del Rey Books, they own Daw Books now, they own Tor Books. They just own everything as far as I can tell, except maybe Orbit. And they are and I work in marketing. I've worked for global businesses. Yes, they look at the market, they look at the trends, they look at the numbers, and they produce products that are going to touch on those numbers and be successful at selling and making them money.
Yep, it's a
That's what it's
situation of
all about.
supply and demand, really.
They're seeing that this is what the market seems to be demanding, and so they're producing books that fill that demand.
Hmm.
Um, it's unfortunate that they are not seeing that there are a lot of readers that would buy books, except there's just nothing there for them.
Hmm.
And so the market is showing that they're not reading books.
Yeah.
The market studies show straight men aren't reading books
Hmm.
because they're not printing any books that I want to read.
Understandable. And it is such a touchy subject. So I'm going to probably say some things that are a hot topic. As a queer female, I believe in inclusivity, and I believe all
Sure.
people should be represented, including people who are straight and non-binary and everyone. I don't necessarily believe in this culture that thinks that we just have to go for the numbers.
Hmm.
Now there is a beautiful indie culture that's starting to be built around this, indie publishing in particular, where there are a lot of really great authors who just don't fit the queer female persona that a lot of companies are trying to promote right now because that is the trend.
Yeah.
And it is unfortunate that they don't get picked up because a lot of the stuff is really good.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, we are seeing this beautiful uprising in indie publishing,
Hmm.
which I think is really cool to see. It kind of feels nice to say screw you to big conglomerates or, big book publishing companies like Random House, who
Hmm.
basically are monopolizing the entire market,
Yeah.
which is getting kind of out of hand.
Monopolizing, they don't care about writing books. They don't care about publishing the books that we really want. They care about publishing the books
Sell.
that are going to
Sell.
promote their bottom line to their
Hmm.
investors.
Yeah. And so that brings up the question of how do you have a healthy construct of capitalism when you have a company like this that's monopolizing things? It also brings up the question of how do you have true equality if you're just switching who's marginalized or
Mhm.
switching who's discriminated against.
And the
Really, it's a
solution is you go
distraction.
grassroots
Yeah.
and just ignore the big
Yeah.
corporations. Don't buy their product.
Yeah.
Buy self-published. Buy from the smaller publishers like Subterranean,
Mm-hmm.
Valancourt, Tachyon,
Mm-hmm.
PS Publishing. They're publishing some great stuff.
Yeah.
Older authors, newer authors, stuff that isn't being published by the big corporate interests.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it is for men. A
Yeah.
lot of it is stories that men would like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Grimold Press has been publishing a lot of Glenn Cook's, which is grimdark.
Ah, okay.
And yes, they're reprints, but they're really, really nice editions. So,
Mm-hmm.
I'm eating that up. And they're
And if
publishing
it's
a lot of others. Yeah.
like, who cares if the trend. Like, I have to say, I had a client recently who said, "Yeah, my company's trying to get more queer-owned and female freelancers to do help us with some of our marketing and graphic design and that kind of stuff." Which for me, great. I identify as female and queer. But at the end of the day, it's like,
They're not hiring you because you're a great designer.
yeah, it doesn't feel good. It feels icky in
Yeah.
a lot of ways, where you're like, are you just hiring me because of my demographic? That's queer washing.
Hmm.
And I think that's rude. I feel
Hmm.
like talent should just be talent. Granted, I love that publishing has a lot of feminist work right now. I love that there's a lot of queer literature. I love seeing that representation in
I
these
think that's great, and
stories.
I think that's essential that
Yes,
everybody have books that will
absolutely.
be for them. But that doesn't mean everybody except white men who've been having books for all those years, and now, because now all the books that are for us were published in the 1970s and before.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, which are great pieces of literature and should absolutely make a revival because some of them are fantastic. And we are finding through our journey as Telltale that there is not as much, the stuff we're finding is actually quite respectful to women in the classics, or it's
Mhm.
actually quite good at representing people who are non-binary, or having these sapphic storylines and things like that, or have strong female characters, or have, really healthy relationships.
Or at least be a story where it's just not about any of that. It's
Yeah,
just,
it's really not about
a
these
couple of people
relationships.
working that are running into this scientific situation. And it's about the science,
Yeah.
you
Or
know.
it's about the plot. Like, it's whatever happens is to motivate the plot, and it is
Hmm.
necessary for it to happen.
Hmm.
And it's just really frustrating to hear people say, like, oh, well, there's nothing representing me. I was like, Camilla was a great sapphic vampire story.
Yeah.
That was phenomenal. That was written back in when? Like early 1900, late 1800s, early
Before
19.
Dracula.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well before it
1880s.
was before Dracula. Fantastic piece
Hmm.
dealing with same-sex attraction and dealing with bloodlust and dealing with the vampiric story and dealing with strong female characters as your main characters, perpetuating this storyline. So we are finding that a lot of what people wanted did exist in the classics.
Hmm.
They just weren't identifying it because for so long people have said, oh, no, women are discriminated against and all this other stuff. And they were. We can't deny that history.
They were,
But
but on the other hand, Jane Austen, the Brontes,
yes.
George Sand, Louisa May Alcott. I
Hmm.
mean, um, the one we're going to read to the right, Virginia Woolf.
Virginia Woolf.
You know,
Anais Nin.
Anais Nin.
hmm
Lots of female writers out there all through the ages.
Yeah, and talking about their uniquely female experiences during their time,
Hmm.
which is important to history.
Hmm.
Um, but now we're seeing the trend going into more of this queer representation. And so, yeah, I see how they're seeing this demographic coming up a lot, especially targeting with this trend. Just because it's happening doesn't always mean it's good. And I also find it very lacking in
And a
inclusivity.
book written strictly to hit a target market is not going to be a very good book.
No, if you're making
It's going to
something
be
for the
very
average person
artificial.
in this demographic, you're going to maybe making something potentially just average for that demographic.
Yeah, because it's just
It's just how the
hitting all
world
the
works.
marketing points and not
Yeah.
caring about writing a damn good story.
Yeah, and that's what disappoints me as a bibliophile is that sure people are getting good entertainment or good enough entertainment, but for those of us who like high literature or want something more than just, you know, our characters to be gay. Like I want to see, and because the other issue run into is that with this marketing plot, you're also going to have really toxic versions of these characters represented as well.
Hmm.
Because people are going to just try to write for the demographic without necessarily having the experience to back it up
Yeah.
or the talent to write it well.
Hmm.
And that's what you're running into. So we also have people potentially being bad for the community, for the queer and female community or
Hmm.
feminist community,
Hmm.
because it's crap.
Yeah.
So,
And I think there is some of what's being published now that's being published just because it's for those demographics, and they're not very good books.
mm-hmm.
And the editors that gave them green light should be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah,
They should have gone back to the author and say, okay, go back to the typewriter and learn how to write, and then come back with your book.
yeah. Or
Uh,
figure out how to reformat this. A lot of
yeah.
sometimes the biggest hang up is the formatting
Hmm.
or like the way it's chronicled. Like if you just switch some chapters, it probably would have went smoother. Like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff happens.
Or use quotation marks.
I didn't miss those. It was fine. Whatever.
Yeah, but
But yeah,
it's
that kind of
that
stuff does, yeah.
punctuation exists for a reason.
Yes. Yes. For those who don't know, we are referencing the book The Other Valley by
Or
Alexander
anything written by Cormac McCarthy.
Scott Alexander
Howard.
Howard. Yeah, anything by McCarthy. But yeah. So it's a double-edged sword. People get what they want. Yes. But if you don't have you can't just be an all statistical marketer. There
Mhm.
has to be some intuition involved as well. There
Yeah,
has to be an
it's
intuitive
like
human
everything
element.
else in our society when everything becomes focused on the spreadsheet providing the bottom line to the investors, all humanity is dead.
Yeah.
And you have lifeless, boring, horrible stuff that when it comes to art and literature, that's not what we want.
Yeah.
We want stuff with humanity. We
Yeah.
want stuff that's going to touch us. We want stuff that's going to move us. And that does not come from an AI hitting marketing points. That comes from real authors writing about real people and real stories and using their imaginations.
Building good
Whether their
characters.
characters are of one sex or another
Yeah.
is
Or
irrelevant.
non-binary or any other identifier that's out there even. Like the point is the story is about people
Hmm.
and we can always see ourselves in other people
Hmm.
because we're all human. We have that basic level with us. Um
But a good story is a
yeah.
good story, whether it's queer or not.
Sometimes I feel like a bad feminist and a bad queer person because I feel like I'm so like equalist. But it's
Well,
true.
but
We
that's what we should
need
be.
it
You
all.
know,
We
yes, we
need
should
all
have
of
queer
it.
characters, but that should having
Mhm.
queer characters should not take precedence to writing a damn good story.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The story and writing should come first. The
Yeah.
craft should come first. Write like Le Guin, learn from Le Guin, and then write in your
You know
queer
who does a
characters.
really good a Tamron Murin?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Tamsin Muir.
Tams, that's how you say it. Dyslexia strikes again. Really great story. Really original, very well crafted,
Hmm.
extremely interesting characters.
I liked
Yes,
it.
they are queer. It is like a blip on the radar because that is not the prominent characteristics of these people. The prominent characteristics is their particular set of skills and how they need to survive this plot
Hmm.
and this theme and this story. And it is so well done and so good. It still has that representation, but it is not the all-encompassing theme of the entire piece of literature. I kind of felt that way too about Legends and Lattes. Having sapphic characters, it
It
was
was
a great
hardly in.
story. Yeah, but it was still a fun, good story.
Yeah.
And it would be entertaining for people who like that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So that's, I
Yeah.
feel like it's
Gideon the Ninth was one that, yes, we were all dragged into it by that tagline of necromantic lesbians in space.
necromantic
Sounds like
lesbians.
it's like Sharknadoes, you know?
Yeah,
It's
you're
just,
like, okay,
this has
that
gotta be
sounds
this has gotta be some really cool trash.
interesting.
But then you start reading it and it's just a damn
Phenomenal.
good
And
story.
it's so much more than that.
Hmm.
It's so much more than just necromantic space lesbians. It is really, there's so much. There's so much there. And it's more than just themselves.
Hmm.
And it's all those characters and oh, it's just so good. So yeah, let's do quality over quantity. And
Hmm.
let's start normalizing all types of people in books.
Hmm.
I don't know why we have to keep switching who's getting more discriminated against or who we're hating on. Like, if we want
And
true
stop the bean
diversity,
counting. Just
yeah, we need,
read it
if we
for
want true
it being a good book and
diversity.
don't care if it's all white characters. Who cares a shit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we
They're
just
still
need,
people.
yeah, what we need are publishers to be much more discerning about what's quality.
Hmm.
And we need them to stop focusing on a particular demographic because I don't feel good about being a queer person and being like, hey, yeah, we want to promote your book. I'm like, just because I'm queer, there's so much more to me than that.
Or just the people who are going around going, well, this book's really, really good, but there's no queer characters, so we're not going to publish it.
Yeah.
You
There's no
know?
women in it. Well, maybe that's not relevant. Maybe the gender isn't relevant to the plot.
Hmm.
Or maybe there's no men in it. Maybe that's not relevant to the plot.
Or maybe it is, and
Maybe
it
it's,
should be written that
yeah.
way.
Maybe they're all non-binary, asexual aliens.
Hmm.
As long as it's relevant to the plot.
Yeah.
Like it
Once
just
again, Le Guin.
if we
Read Le
want
Guin and learn from her.
yeah. I don't understand like if we want a world of all types, we need to be accepting of all types and stop acting like the other guy is always the enemy.
Yeah.
It's just a
And stop
distraction.
criticizing somebody because they write from what they know.
Yeah, you can write from your perspective. There's nothing wrong with that. Or if you're a historian who is an expert on the subject, there's nothing wrong with that.
Hmm.
But I think also there is something to be said about writing from the experience of that POV.
Hmm.
But that's why we need the diversity because nobody's had the exact same experience.
Yeah.
So we need all of it.
Hmm.
We can't just pick and choose what's the trend right now.
Hmm. And ultimately, I see this going in a good direction
Mm-hmm.
because I do feel that it is the narrow-minded corporate views that are causing this situation and forcing anybody that's not writing those books to either self-publish or publish with the smaller publishers that I mentioned before.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a good thing
Yeah.
because that arena is a lot more democratic. It's a little harder to find what you're looking for there because they don't have the marketing budgets of Random House. So they're not getting in front of you as easily. There are really good booktube channels that are talking about these independently published authors.
Mm-hmm.
And there's even a whole award that a number of booktube channels are the judges of, where
Mm-hmm.
they vote for the best books
Yeah.
independently self-published.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. And ultimately that's where you're going to find the best fiction.
Mm-hmm.
In when things play out here, if you want a really good book, you're going to have to avoid the corporate conglomerates, avoid the Barnes and Nobles, and go into
Yeah.
these indie sources and small publishers like I say, Subterranean and PS Publishing and some of those others,
Mm-hmm.
and look at what they have to offer. And that's where you're going to find your favorite books.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to create a stronger literature
Yes.
by going that route, by kind of going grassroots and underground and
Mm-hmm.
um, going around the capitalist system,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. And I fully believe, like, I still stand by this. This is my personal not mantra, is if you want a beautiful world, you need to stop starving the artists.
Hmm.
And I feel like corporations following statistics and trends is another method by which to starve outlier artists from outside of that trend. If you want true diversity and true inclusivity, we need to allow all voices, even the like shitty ones with terrible opinions. How do you learn to build better ethics and build better thoughts and think outside of that kind of bigotry or that kind of stuff if it doesn't exist
Right.
and it's censored? How are you supposed to fight the logic if you don't know what the logic is?
Hmm.
So it's a slippery slope when you start getting into these pockets like this and just following these trends and what's, going viral
Yeah,
kind of
we
thing.
definitely need a much more open and free and equal opportunity of expression in not just literature, but all the arts.
Mm-hmm.
That is not going to have culture, is not going to have censorship, is not going to have narrow-minded marketing towards trends that ignores
Yeah.
huge
Because that's
sections
how we
of the
got
market.
into this situation in the first place
Hmm.
of having a lack of representation
Hmm.
in literature for queer and female people is
Yeah.
because the trends and the statistics said this is what the people want.
Hmm.
So it's just swinging the other way.
Yeah.
And people need to realize that it can swing the opposite direction just as quickly and become a problem again.
Hmm.
And we need to enjoy being able to have diversity.
Hmm.
We are allowed that, and that is, I'd say it's a right. We have a right to hear, like, especially in the United States where we have this freedom of speech, not freedom from consequence, but freedom
Yeah.
of speech.
Yeah.
We need to be able to hear all these voices.
Hmm. And while science fiction, when I was young, I didn't realize all this. As I've gotten older and learned more about a lot of the biographies of classic science fiction authors, I've realized that science fiction was a truly diverse group.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of guys that were not what you expected,
Mm-hmm.
and you learned about that later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've learned about that later. I didn't know that when I was reading science fiction. Yes, it did seem
Mm-hmm.
like it was all white male engineers solving
Mm-hmm.
problems, but the people writing these stories were not all white male straight engineers.
Yeah.
There were some surprises in there.
Yeah. And that was
So
their voice was important.
but they had to hide who they were
Yeah.
because of our society, not because of science fiction, but because of the greater society around them.
Yes.
But they did sneak a lot of things into their science fiction that a lot of people aren't really all that aware of.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
A lot of subtle things, especially when you're dealing with aliens, you can subtly deal with all of those issues of diversity
Mm-hmm.
because now you got something that's not like anything on Earth.
Yeah.
You know?
So now we can start talking about things that are hermaphroditic
Yeah.
and have that situation come up.
But even just aliens that have different cultures, different religions, different science,
Mm-hmm.
um, different evolutionary paths,
Mm-hmm.
you know, still gets across this idea of accepting difference.
Yes. And literature should be a point of discovery.
Hmm.
It shouldn't necessarily be a point, just a point of entertainment. It can be and should be also entertainment.
Yeah.
But ultimately, literature has such power that being able to hear everything is just so incredibly important. It's why banning books is so bad.
Hmm.
You need to know. You
Yeah.
need to know even the good, the bad, and the ugly in
Yeah.
order to be a full, well-rounded person.
Well, the
Have a
only way to avoid repeating a mistake is to
yeah,
make sure you understand why it was a mistake to begin with,
yes. Which is
which
why
means
this
to
whole thing
remember
is so
history.
tragic and straight men are reading.
Yeah, they're just
Let
not
them read,
reading
leave
your
them
books.
alone. Yeah. And maybe they're not reading what's trending because it's not their thing. People are
Well,
allowed to enjoy things.
hmm.
Let's let people enjoy things.
Yeah, and there
Yeah.
has been a side conversation about the death of epic fantasy at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And that again, that's a little more practical one that the publishers they were getting into these contracts for these big
Mm-hmm.
long fantasy series where they were risking, they were writing
Mm-hmm.
contracts that they were going to publish all these books. And once you publish a couple of them, you can't back out. The
Yeah.
fans are going to be eating
Once you're
you
dead.
alive if
Yeah.
you don't write Winds of Winter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're gonna hear about it for till your dying day. And so they have to keep going forward even though the sales numbers are going down and down and down
Mm-hmm.
and down with each new
Yeah.
volume.
Yeah.
And that's typically what happens with a long series. It'll peak at first, meaning the first book doesn't sell great, second book runaway success, but then after that, things decline. Harry
Mm-hmm.
Potter might be the exception, but all the other big series like that, you have that typical marketing curve
Mm-hmm.
where the success of one. So understandable that publishers don't want to get into that contract for a
Yes.
big long epic fantasy series
Yes. And
and would prefer a standalone.
today's yeah, young people don't have the attention span for all that.
Yeah.
That's a lot of literature. Like I generally make I think Harry Potter was the longest I've read. Garth Nix's Keys to the Kingdom was the second longest.
Hmm.
But I stop at that. I don't want a 27 book series.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time to dedicate to something, and I have a very busy life. And life is not getting any less busy. Like the average American, maybe the average white European of any kind, anywhere, basically has to have two jobs
Hmm.
or one really good six-figure paying one in order to be able to survive right now. Reading is a pleasure that only some get paid for.
Yeah.
So you have to be very particular with your spare time now.
Hmm.
So yeah, I see how that can be.
But there are people that want the people that want those epic fantasies. What they love about them is that they get to stay with this world. It's favorite characters that they get to revisit again and again and again.
Places they get to
That
revisit
these
again.
people are like
Mhm.
family to them, and they don't want them to go away. And so when the series does come to an end, they usually cry.
Yeah, we just have that book hangover where you're like, it's over now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but that means you get to discover something
so
new.
there are those people that do like that. And so there is a market, maybe it's smaller now, but
Hmm.
there is a market for epic fantasy.
Yeah.
And there are writers that are doing it in the indie publishing space.
Hmm. Yep. So yeah,
And they're worth checking out because
absolutely.
we used to think of that it was indie published because it wasn't any good. But that's not the case anymore. A
Hmm.
lot of indie publish is indie published because it's not fitting into the marketing
Yeah, it's not
trends
fitting the marketing
that the big
demographic.
corporations are following.
Yep.
And or like Epic Fantasy, it's just too expensive to publish a 20 book series.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot of time and dedication.
Hmm.
It's a lot of trees.
And a lot of marketing.
Yeah, for real. But yeah, I think I've beaten this one to death.
Yeah,
I
I
could go home
guess
and take a nap right now. I'm like,
in
goodness gracious.
in closing, I guess we should all look forward to this new indie publishing
Mm-hmm.
phenomenon that is
Yeah.
going to bring us the stuff that we all want,
Yes.
the straight guys as well.
Yes.
And we are out there reading books,
Mm-hmm.
you
And
know.
to be clear as well, we are not telling anyone that they don't get to enjoy what's trending right now. You absolutely are. You do you, boo. What we're saying is everybody should be able to do a you do you, boo
Yeah,
situation.
yeah,
Everybody should
we
be
should
able
have
to
some
have
fun in
something
this
to
scenario.
enjoy. Yeah. Yeah. We should. Why not? Throw it out there.
Yeah, and there is a new Conan book just published
Hell yeah.
by Titan Books, a big publisher over in England.
Nice.
Hmm.
So yeah, look for what you love. Enjoy it when it's there. Just be mindful that trends are trends and they'll fall out of style at another time too.
Yeah.
So it is what it is.
And maybe some markets are smaller, but they still
Reading.
do exist. You
Yeah.
know, there are straight guys reading. There are guys that like fantasy. There are guys that still like science
Yeah.
fiction. Science
Dudes
fiction
be
is still
reading.
viable. You know, all the different genres. There's nothing dying. They're just
Mm-hmm.
maybe not at the forefront.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it is a hard time to find time for reading. There's a lot of societal pressure to be working and always productive. So
Yeah,
I understand that demographic potentially having an issue with that. But people are reading. Don't let reading die.
right.
So yeah, thanks for joining us. Let us know your thoughts and opinions. We know this is a really extensive and kind of hot take topic, but we'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. We just ask that you be respectful of one another in the comments as well as us. Everybody's going to have their own thoughts and perspectives because not everybody has every experience. So, enjoy, like, subscribe, and come back for more topic videos.
Mm,
We've certainly got a long list going.
yeah.
I don't even want to whip it out because I don't want to start listing off anything and make any promises. We might die before that list is touched more.
I got that list.
I know.
Put it away.
Yes, yes. We do have a lot that we cover. But yeah. So thanks for joining us, guys, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye!